here again at the Hoosier garage, and I'm contemplating how I need to do this, since I left the backing plates hanging on there so we wouldn't lose our brake bleed and all that sort of thing. That'll be a little bit in the way. I'll have to make sure everything moves around. I don't pinch any of the brake lines or tear anything up that way. So yeah, we now have a 271. It's more of a highway gear. We don't need a 355. I still got the 355s in the box out back, but we went 271. It's an open rear end, so nothing hot rod spectacular in that regard. And we had the gentleman put it together. Did a great job, I think. And of course, everything's still loose because you got to slip the axles in. We're just keeping it light right now so we can work with it. And then we'll, gasket, oil, all that stuff later. But the important thing right now is just getting it mounted up to the pads, and we can hook our brake tee back in and start clipping everything back in that way, and then the backing plates, get that in there too. So I just got it on a floor jack here, balanced out pretty good. And if you're careful, you coulda, woulda, shoulda put it in there. Just like I said, keep your brake backing plates and your brake lines in your view if you did it this way. Pretty well centered. I will move it over just a little bit. And remember, a lot of these, the pad here for the spring, there's a little hole in it, and there's where your bolt holds your springs together. You'll have like a little nub underneath it or on top, depending on which way your axle sets. And it needs to center on top of those or inside of them. So, looking at this, I'm going to try to lower that jack. I think it's got a little bit, it can go down. And just a touch. Most of it's leaning up on this way, so I have to move it down. Move our backing plates. Hang on my seat, yeah. If it'll let me roll it in this position, great. Got a little bit there. I had the nuts run on these studs for the backing plates. I'm going to go ahead and take those off. It's probably best to have had them off anyways. Due to our kind of our fit here, our clearance, all that stuff to work with. Of course, these 8 1/4, they usually just have 4. 8 3/4 will have 5, but it's the same bolt pattern. And usually the backing plates are interchangeable between those two rears also. Okay, so this part of the line here needs to go in front of the pad, so it does all need to go up a little further. I'm going to let that rest there. Try to get to the center as much as I can here. There we go. Should be at a good spot there. Now this, I'm going to show you right here. Okay, so you can see that side's still out that way, but right here, the hole is about lined up with this. So that's good. This is pretty good, well lined up, but we need to jack the rear up, and then we could fit this over this hub right here on the axle. So we'll do that. Okay. Should. There we go. And then you don't have to put them all in yet. But just put at least one of the nuts on here. That way it kind of keeps it from wandering them back off or anything like that. Not like that. Now on this side it's kind of a similar thing. Good thing is we can use the pad on that side as we jack it up, since it's leaning like this, leaning down on this side. As we jack it up, it's going to push against the spring, and it'll allow this to kind of leverage up, and then we can redirect this on the end. So I'm going to take the nuts off this side here of the axle housing, and we'll prepare it for that. That way it'll slip right on there and we won't have to fight any of it after the fact. A little bit of guidance here. So then when it goes up, it should set more in that hub. Like a so. There we go. And again, I'll put one of the nuts on there to anchor it. Positioning these pilot holes onto the stubs is a little tricky, especially with one person. But just keep bumping it up until you get a little bit of touch on the pads, and you should be able to kind of move it over then, one way or the other. Okay, so I had to put a block under here because it slipped off of the jack pad here. So we had to go down and go back up. Just the nature of the way this thing jacks up, it has the lean that produces. So we might have to hold the tail shaft down and guide it up. There we go. Put a little pressure on the springs there. We'll get our U-bolts and our perches and go from there. on, before we go any further here, I just want to thank RT's Opar Salvage. He's the one that hooked us up with the 271 gears that we eventually put in here. So thanks, RT. Check it out below. Send him an email. It's got all kinds of stuff. You get some pretty good stuff too. So dealer stuff, parts cars, all the goodies. So check it out. Alright, so the rear's tightened down. I had to cut about 3/8 of an inch off of the U-bolt ends. It's way too long. Probably if you had more leaves in there and stuff, it's just a universal bolt. So I cut it off and I was able to get my extended socket over top there, deep well socket, and tighten them down. I just went into a crisscross sequence, just do a crank, go to the other one, do a crank, and just keep doing that all the way around until they get tight, and then you can torque them down. It keeps them from getting oblong and stretched and that sort of thing. What I'm holding here is one of the shock bolts. It's the upper shock bolt that goes through here. And I just took some time and cleaned all this up on the inside of the frame rail where this little pad is, a little reinforcement pad. I took the bolts out. I got the washers from soaking. I'm going to repaint those. And getting this all under control. We got the C-clips in the axle. I didn't show you none of that. That's previous videos. I don't want to get too menial showing you stuff. It's kind of eating up your time. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to put these in. I got one of the shocks here. I went ahead and painted them Chrysler blue. Just like the fronts. Went around the sticker. They are Napa Proformers. So I put some white lithium on them there, so that way they won't get froze up in there over time. We'll put our bolts in. Same thing here. Put some grease in there. And I mean, these are pretty much ready to go in, so. And go ahead and just twist them, get all that grease around in there. And then there'll be a washer, like a cup washer on one side. That'll go here, and obviously here, then a nut. Other than that, I don't have the cover on the rear axle bolted down yet. I need to get a new seal, and we need to get some RTV on it, be done with that, and we can fill it with grease, and we need to get a couple of U-joints for that drive shaft, but I'll probably do that when I get the front end. I can set the front end down, that way I get the angle and I don't lose all my transmission fluid out the tail shaft of the 727. So we're just trying to think ahead, do it easy without having a big mess. And I'll explain the tire situation here in a bit, because I want to get the wheels and tires into this video so you can see all that and have like a grand finale of that. But there's a little situation we have with the tires. It was the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 tires, and I had 295 50 15-inch rim for the back, both sides. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. I'll tell you what happened. We had to switch springs. So when I bought the 72 van back in December of 2019, it was an old military van. I think it was Newburgh, Indiana is what I could tell
what the old lettering on the door had said. It was like, I think it was a contractor for the U.S. Army. So everything was painted like that drab olive green color, including the wheels and the aluminum. Keep that in mind, aluminum hubcaps. These kind of hubcaps are kind of popular in the muscle car circles. They are usually called red stripe. They have the red stripe here. The aluminum ones were just like a spray painted look, like a brushed look, and they had the black reliefs here and where the star was, the front Dodge logo. All four of them was on here, on the old 15-inch steel wheels, and they was in pretty rough shape, pretty beat up. But I thought that's cool that they lasted all that time on this vehicle, and they weren't taken off or, you know, pop off and roll away, or, you know like hubcaps tend to do. So I decided, as a kind of a tribute to that, since the van is now in its retirement civilian years from the military, that as it's going through a flashier midlife crisis, that it would retain that general concept of the dog dish hubcaps, but we're going to upgrade them to the stainless steel red stripe and with the black reliefs, shine them up, but they're going to have body colored wheels just as they are here, and we're going to go a lot wider. So this is what was, and you're soon to see what will be. Whoa! There it is, right there. Back on its feet. So my plan when I was doing the whole axle thing was to think, well, let's take those two front tires and the wheels, the 15 by 8 wheels, what they were, and then we got a 245 by 60 15-inch tire, and we was going to go have them put on. That way I could set the front of it down and get a tilt on the van up, so I could take the drive shaft out and all the, or at least the better part of the transmission fluid stay in the transmission while the drive shaft comes out for rehab and you get, U-joints and all that kind of stuff on it. Had a little problem though, let me show you. Now I bought these rims used, and they've been re-banded basically. These are original centers, and they put a new 8-inch band on them back in 2015. They're even dated. I don't know if they're Stockton or if they was wheel Vintiques. I think they're Stockton though, that's what I was told. I took them in and they said we can't get them to seal. And what had happened, I'm going to put the picture up right here. You see that around that edge? Well, it's like a little V pattern is the way I describe it. And it went all the way around 3 of the beads, all the way around here. And one of them was sealing good. It didn't have any of that kind of damage on it. And the one there with the paint on it, you can kind of see it looked a little wobbly. But when I sanded it back, I could see that. So I took a sanding disc that was worn out, and I'm talking about on a grinder. The name is escaping me. But it was mostly worn out where there wasn't much abrasion on it. And I just went around the whole rim, and it wasn't very deep. And just enough to take that off and smooth it out. I sanded it after that by hand, and then resprayed the red on it to give it a nice, glossy, slick seal on there. So hopefully when these set up after a few days, I painted them yesterday and they're pretty dry, but you need to give them a few days to cure. We'll take them in and hopefully we'll have no problem with them sealing. And it was very minor. It was very minor bubbles that was coming up when they would spray the soapy water on it. So today I instead took these in, got them mounted up, no problem there. They did have to put some weights on the front side. I requested to put on the back, and they said, well, it's gonna throw it off too much. So they was nice enough and actually painted them for me, and they did pretty good. So I'm not gonna complain about that. They're steel rims, and it kind of has that tough utilitarian look, but it looks hot rod at the same time. So I'm pretty happy with it. And these are $295 50. Again, on a 15 by 10 rim. Cooper Cobra Radial GT. And here's the situation with those also. This has been kind of a little bit of a process. Some of you that follow me on social media noticed that I had some Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 tires, and they was $295 50s. And I'd already ordered them because I thought, well, we're doing the Hoosier, Indiana, the kind of the theme on this fan, so why not get, other than having Hoosier tires or, you know, some kind of a slick on there, a good radio like that that actually says Indy 500 and sponsored by the Speedway. Let's put those on here. But as I got into my consumership of the front tires, I noticed that they did not have anything to match those tires in the mid-range tire selection. I'm talking 235 by 60 or 235 by I think 70. They didn't have 245, they didn't have 255, they didn't have a 265. They basically stopped at 225 and then jumped over all those mid-grade sizes and went to 275. What's a boy to do? I didn't want to put mismatched tires like Cooper's on the front and Indy's on the back, so I sold them for basically what I paid. I didn't even use them, never mounted, and decided to just go with the Coopers. So they're cool tires, those Indy 500s, but just keep that in mind if you are wanting to do the staggered thing. If you do the same all the way around, you'll be all right. Can't really do that on this fan. So yeah. So if anything, this completely changes the character of this, and I'm pretty happy with it. I really like them. So in the meantime, you know, usually the wheels tired, that's the last thing you do, but we need some motivation. We need to motivate to get the rest of it done, so we'll probably have to cover them up good or put the other wheels back on while we get the body work in order. And you know, we got a little ways to go. But these nice and wide. Nice and wide. Look good. We get that front end set down on some of these wheels for the front. There's these two here. Then we'll be in good shape. Alright, so we got a pretty good tilt on this van. Shouldn't be rocket science.
I won't be surprised if some fluid comes out or even a lot. You know, this is the way it goes. But it's just a slip yoke. It's not a bolt-on yoke. So we do have some action here. I'm going to see if it does leak, if I can help it. Nope. Just out of the end of the yoke. We can remedy that. So that's exactly what I wanted.
And here we have it. So we got a 727 slip yoke. These are different than the 904s. Different splining on it. These, I know you can tell they don't have any splining for the first like inch and a half or so. Here it's just smooth, and you'll see the splining in there. So we'll have to get these U-joints off. We'll go ahead and clean this up, sand it, paint it gray or silver or black, whatever. And we'll see if we can acquire some new U-joints, if they're both the same front and back. Roughly looking at it, they probably are, but we'll get through that and see what we got. Okay, so I did put a little white grease around the seal part of the slip yoke, and it does have like a double spline, and I believe actually it doesn't matter on this one. Some of them have the double tooth spline. It has it on the slip yoke itself, but it isn't on the transmission shaft itself, so in that case it doesn't matter. So we will go ahead and carefully slip it in. Like so. Get it to latch.
And then you slip it in. Don't hammer it down in there good, but just let it go all the way forward until you get enough clearance here, and then you'll take your tail shaft or your yoke on your differential and square it up with here. And it might be kind of herky-jerky, so just try to slip it in there easy. Not always the easiest part as you think it should be. And in this case, you have to compress the caps on the yoke or on the U-joint for it to fit in there. And there we go. It fits in about there. Make sure that the clips on your caps are not binding or it's going to pop it off. I think it's grabbing a little bit there. So there we go. It fit in. We're all the way into the saddle. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of push back on it there. And you can even turn your wheel. Your wheels need to be off the ground for it to do this. Turn it just a little bit and it kind of puts it on a bind. I'll take my straps and I'll go over here over each one of these bearing caps, and then we'll run the screws in. We want to put some Loctite on the screws or a fine thread screw, and then we should be good to go. Torque them down.
So in conclusion, our 72 B200 trading van is back on all 4 tires, brand new tires, different wheels. We've got the drive shaft, we've got the rear end back in under it. We're in a pretty good spot. We have a few things to do, one of them being windshield and door seals, the window glass, all that stuff. A lot of that can be taken care of in the course of a week, and that's probably going to be next on the agenda. A lot of the windows on the sides, like the doors and all the cargo areas, those will probably have to be trimmed out in red before I can paint them, or I'm sorry, before I put the windows in, so that we'll have sufficient coverage of paint there. That's a pretty quick thing. But other stuff, get some of the lights back in here. I'm going to gear up for maybe a month from now. We can have this on the road. Initially, I think back last fall, I was hoping for March. We've gone way over that, getting too picky about stuff, that sort of thing. So, make sure you like and subscribe, because we got a lot more coming up on this van. We got paint work, we got interior work coming, and we've never driven this. We never even had it in gear while it was running. So, you'll be with us for the first time on that, won't you? Thanks for coming to the Hoosier Garage.